Hey guys, this is Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for being here with us on the Thrive Bites podcast. This is season 4, and we're so excited for you to be here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Colin Zhu, double boarded in family and lifestyle medicine, and I interview the best and most passionate health and wellness experts of the industry on this platform. And we talk about plant-powered living, emotional resilience, and creating a thriving mindset. And this season, we're taking it live, we're taking it on multiple platforms, and we're taking it as a Q&A discussion as well as our interviewing of our guests. So we're super stoked about this, and please remember to like and subscribe down below, and we will see you. Welcome to the next episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thrive Bites podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for being here with us. You can be anywhere in the world, and I am so glad that you have chosen to take a few moments to join us today. And this is going to be a second to last episode for the current season of season 4, and we're really, really excited. Today's topic is very it's a great topic to talk about, especially in the plant-based, movement and world that we're living in. We do a lot of plant-powered talking and conversing, and I've had a lot of great guests. But going deeper is helping out patients, especially our pregnant patients. So this episode is while you're pregnant, how do pregnant women stay healthy while being plant-based? And I think it's a fantastic, topic. Our guest for today is Dr. Jeffrey Pierce. And just a little bit about Dr. Jeffrey Pierce. He is a board-certified family medicine physician, and he also has other certifications in global health and obstetrics as well. He is passionate about using whole food plant-based diet and other lifestyle medicine modalities to help people get healthier, get off of medications, and live longer, fuller lives. And his goal is to meet his patients where they're at, work with them at their pace, and improve their health one day at a time. He's originally born and raised in South Texas, has studied there, and also has done his training in Northern California as well, and also at Massachusetts General. He's also worked extensively around the globe, including El Salvador, Honduras, Peru, the Philippines, just to name a few. And in addition to his lifestyle medicine work, he continues to practice and teach high-risk and surgical obstetrics, mentor outstanding family residents in global health, and to teach point-of-care ultrasound through Global Ultrasound Institute. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Jeffrey Pierce. Hello.
Hi there, Colin. Thank you very much for having me. Really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. This is your second time being here. I know we've had the whole plant-based, team on plant-based telehealth, earlier in the season. So I'm really glad for a focus session with you. So tell us where you're calling from.
In our lovely place up in Northern California, Sonoma County, just about an hour north of San Francisco. Enjoying the rain. Hopefully, the very end of fire season is behind us, and now just enjoying what winter brings.
Yes, definitely. Here in Southern California, it stormed a whole bit actually, so it was pretty atypical. So, but that just adds to our current environment of climate change. So, but that is another discussion for another time. So. I am so glad you're here. Very, very stoked. And, we've talked offline about this in terms of, our pregnant population and how super important it is to not just, go from point A to point B during their entire, pregnancy, but, going a little bit deeper. So before we get into that, why don't we let the audience know, let them know you a little bit better on how did you start off doing what you're doing in regards to your traditional work?
So I really enjoyed the obstetrics rotations I did in family medicine training when I was a resident. And it was the month that I looked forward to. And even though we worked real hard during that month, at the end of it, I was missing it, sad to see it go as we'd go on to our other rotations as we were learning to be family docs. And I couldn't say that for a whole lot of other aspects of family and work. And so, but one of the other areas that I did enjoy was global health and HIV medicine and tuberculosis medicine, things like that. And so my first job after I finished my training was actually living for a year in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, and did some very meaningful work there. But when I came back to the States, and continued my work back and forth between the US and Africa, I was missing obstetrics. And so I went back maybe 5 years after I finished my training and did a combined high-risk obstetrics and global health fellowship, where I did 2 years of pretty intensive training, getting better at doing cesarean sections and taking care of women with very high-risk conditions, very high blood pressure, sugars out of control, other chronic illnesses that made pregnancy dangerous for them. And so I've done that ever since, and love the work.
Awesome. Yeah, that's an amazing kind of circle to kind of go around. Being a family physician myself, you know as well as I do the breadth and depth of family medicine, and how you can go as wide as possible, you can go as deep as possible, and kind of like unlike internal medicine, where you have these very specific specialties like cardiology and gastroenterology. Family medicine doesn't have too many subspecialties, but the ones we have are pretty unique. So that's really cool that you were able to do that, especially doing overseas work. Having done medical missions myself, I know that kind of work is always needed, and is never enough. So so I appreciate the fact that you've contributed your time in doing that.
Thanks.
My next question is, tell us a little bit about how you got into lifestyle medicine, and how you made a transition to whole food plant-based, at personally and also professionally. Tell us which one came first.
Okay, great. Personally, my own move happened first. I, having grown up in South Texas, was exposed at the time to just omnivorous diets, pretty meat heavy diets, and in college watched a documentary on the current factory farming situation that we have in the US. And that moved me to start eating vegetarian. That was back a little bit more than 21 years ago. And I always kept that very private and separate from my medical work as I went through medical school and residency, because I didn't actually know very much about the health benefits to it. I just thought it was about compassion and trying to minimize suffering. But when I stumbled upon the increasing, and actually at this point, vast body of scientific literature and teaching when it comes to the health benefits for our patients and ourselves and the planet, I started to talk more about it with our patients, learn more about the details so that I could make specific and hopefully very helpful recommendations when it came to food as medicine, lifestyle choices as medicine. And not only were did these choices sort of work maybe as good as the medicines that we use, but oftentimes for many chronic illnesses work a lot better, and don't have the side effects and costs that our high-powered medications and procedures do. So that was my personal move going into professionally. And the other part of that, I think, was that what a lot of providers who do outpatient medicine feel is that we have a sort of a grind of the typical 15-minute visit, where we are supposed to chat with a patient and help them with their 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 illnesses that they would like to talk about today. And during that 15 minutes, I felt like basically I was making sure that there weren't any fires to put out, any emergencies, and then refilling some medications. And when I learned more and more about how preventable and treatable and reversible these conditions are with eating the right foods and exercising and sleeping and de-stressing, that I work to get away from that model and focus more on lifestyle medicine practice.
No, so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So a couple of questions kind of sprung into my mind as you were saying that is, did you have any personal health challenges yourself, or did you have, maybe like a close friend or colleague or family member that, had something where, when applied, lifestyle medicine or, going on a more plant-based regimen, it actually helped improve their lives or health?
Yeah. Personally, I've been pretty lucky when it comes to chronic illness, and I was making the move mostly for prevention, but then some things that I hadn't even thought about, and I would assume that it's due to my changes in lifestyle, but I guess I don't have strong scientific proof. But my seasonal allergies have gone away, and I'm in an area that's kind of famous for having a lot of seasonal allergies, and those have gone away. My hand arthritis that would come and go has pretty much gone away. And I've also lost some pounds and am in a healthier weight range, and all without really trying to fix any of those issues. They were sort of just things that happened as I was making these choices. And then, friends and family that I've had this and that have gone along or come along the way. And so I share with them what I know, see if it's helpful, if they'd like to know more about it.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting how, and I hear the same stories too, how like whether personally or professionally, when other of our fellow, medical colleagues, implement the same thing, patients would just, get better, in terms of that. And I like how, it's not something you were aiming for, but having gone and done that yourself, you realize, this actually got better, and that wasn't even like a target of yours. Whereas the opposite, where, when we practice conventional medicine and we're giving these, said medication, and then, then out of nowhere, you have a side effect that comes up, and then we have to treat that as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting how it's on the flip side. So what have you experienced? Because, now, we are both, working with the same team in terms of plant-based telehealth as well. What have you seen, or if you can share some experiences before, over time, in terms of how lifestyle medicine has improved, patients? Like, what are some quick, maybe like reactions or feedback in terms of, they've never done it before, and then they've gone and done services with you, and they're like, wow, I didn't realize that, it's helped me so much.
Yeah. Well, one of the nice aspects of this current position working with plant-based telehealth is that so many people come to the program, come to the practice already being convinced of the benefits. They've read the books, seen the movies, listened to the podcasts like yours, and had friends and family get better, et cetera. And so oftentimes my first appointment is, oh, hey, by the way, doc, I know we're just meeting. I have this one or two little issues to work with. I've already lost 50, 75, 100 pounds. I've already reversed my diabetes. I'm already off of, 2 of the 3 blood pressure pills that I was on. And, what can you do about, A or B that's still left to work with? And so it's pretty amazing to see. It's sort of like a string of success stories that come to me, and that's really nice. I do my best to help work with them and guide them to meeting their next goals. I think the big saves are often those, right? Like changes in weight, changes in sugar control, and blood pressure control, and cholesterol, and these things are these conditions which plague so many of us in the United States and around the world, are just known to melt away. And then the additional findings are the ones that, things that I was not really expecting, but seeing a patient who has multiple sclerosis get much better off of some of these more intensive whole food plant-based dosing protocols and other conditions that are beyond the sort of typical diabetes, hypertension, and obesity.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting, and everyone is a case by case basis, but as long as they can make a valiant effort, be under the guidance of yourself, I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor. So let's switch topics and go to the nitty gritty of why we're here is, pregnant women. We love them all, and very, very important to our society, right? And, and being, whole food plant-based, ourselves, and, walking the talk and preaching what we practice. There obviously needs to be special attention and more hyper focus within this type of subgroup in this population and demographics. What do pregnant women need to know while they're being whole food plant-based, or if they are trying to incorporate more plant sources into their diet?
Yeah. Well, your point about more information being helpful and necessary is true, and it affects our society on many levels. Our current sort of lack of systemic knowledge or group knowledge on this, and that includes a lot of health practitioners as well. I think most of our training in medical school and residency is, if we hear anything about plant-based or veganism, it's like, watch out for these bad things that can happen. And there was maybe zero training actually in all of the years that that we go through to get to where we are, that really talked about the benefits of this, and that's true within and outside of pregnancy. But so for any woman who is thinking about being pregnant or pregnant already and is already whole food plant-based, be reassured that there's good evidence that not only is it okay to do, which is often the question, is it okay if I don't eat, meat or drink milk or eat eggs? But it's actually better in most every way. And we look at these conditions that are the focus of our clinic visits and routine obstetrical prenatal visits and labor and delivery care. The ones that get all the focus are high blood pressure, both the chronic blood pressure problems that women come in with, but also develop specifically just during pregnancy, things called gestational hypertension and preeclampsia. Conditions like gestational diabetes, so diabetes that only affects women during their pregnancy, and pre-existing diabetes, and preterm delivery risk and cesarean risk, and infant mortality and fetal demises and maternal mortality. All of these things, there's actually evidence that shows that eating either predominantly or exclusively plant-based diet improves. And it floors me the more I have learned about this, that this is a conversation that's just not happening by and large in obstetrical departments. Just about every OB department has monthly meetings or every other month meetings. And we're talking about, drug A or drug B that might help a patient by some small amount in one field, like preterm deliveries. But if we really focused our effort onto getting our patients to move much closer to to predominantly or exclusively plant-based diet, we would be seeing improvements in all of these areas, which are the major causes of morbidity and mortality for moms and their babies. So we are looking forward to the idea that there will be more education in medical school and in training for that. And then speaking directly to our friends and family members and patients that are pregnant, are thinking about being pregnant, be reassured that, the things that we hear from our friends, like, oh, you have to eat this and you have to drink that if you're going to be okay during your pregnancy, that's mostly just made up kind of things that your friend or cousin or aunt or whatever heard when they were pregnant, and tends not to be based on science. And so I would say that a good reference for pregnant women is this book that I'm going to hold up to the camera for those who are watching this, is Nourish, the Definitive Plant-Based Nutrition Guide for Families by Dr. Reshma Shah, who is a pediatrician, and Brenda Davis, who is a wonderful registered dietitian. And it's a book that is written for the layperson, but I reference it frequently. It's got about a 20-page chapter on pregnancy, and it's uses straightforward language and very encompassing language, because it is not just for a strict vegan pregnancy, but for people who want to just eat better, using mixed diets or omnivorous diets, for how they can change their diet in a way that is going to maximize their own health and their baby's health. And we can go also into specifics as well, if now is a good time for that, Colin.
Yeah. A lot of things, when in obstetrics is, we're just not focusing on one person. You're focusing on two, essentially. And I think because it's a very, it's a medical / surgical, very dynamic field. A lot of times it's, to me, in my impression in my early, obstetrics career, which I don't do anymore, it's a lot of it is about mitigating risk, was my impression of it. And, how can we decrease surgical complications? How can we, like you said, the mortality and morbidity and, and all this. And so, yes, less of it is actually, from my, recollection has been on the preventative side of it. And I'm not really sure. I think a part of it is, the lack of education, due to the earlier, medical schooling and training. I don't know in terms of, now, where has the curriculum improved? I know overall, a lot of schools have been trying to improve the preventative side. I know my alma mater has been doing well, doing a better job in terms of improving lifestyle and culinary medicine. So, I'm not sure on a global level if this is even considered. Is it considered more or less? I don't know if you can speak to that.
Cool. So I'd say from prevention in general, I think the field of obstetrics it has done a pretty good job on, when you think more broadly about, well, let's work on stopping smoking, because a lot of women, for example, they're not in care most of their lives, but they get into care, they seek medical care when they're pregnant, right? They want to maximize their health and their baby's chances for having a healthy start. And so there's been a good focus on quitting smoking and, staying away from certain poisons and toxins, and don't drink alcohol, and don't drink too much caffeine, and wear a seatbelt the proper way, and things like that. So I think, speaking broadly, I'm proud of the work that's done in obstetrics as far as prevention. As far as a focus on eating a healthier diet, I think that is still lacking in general, because as we see in most fields of medicine, that I think there's partly it's the slow gain in better education, better realization of the science, moving to medical models that give remuneration for spending any time talking about this and not just prescribing a pill, and really just getting faith in the providers that offer this stuff to your patients, and they will do it. I mean, you see women who smoke half a pack a day, for years and years and years, and then they just stop, and turn on a dime for their pregnancy. And if someone can do that with cigarettes, they can do it with ultra processed food and bacon and stuff like that, even though that those can be hard to quit too.
Yeah, I would say the public health, education regarding smoking and alcohol has definitely improved over the decades. And over time, we, in terms of pregnancy, and you can certainly update me as well in terms of, fish and, mercury and heavy metals and things like that, staying away from, raw, more raw, seafoods and things. In terms of the whole food plant-based, especially what you've researched, are there specifics in terms of more or less in terms of the adjustments? If someone were to be more plant predominant, are there, macro or micro adjustments that a pregnant woman needs to pay attention to?
Sure. The simple part of it is that you can eat poorly, no matter what diet you follow. You can eat poorly as an omnivore, you can eat poorly as a vegan, you can eat poorly as a vegetarian, but you can also eat very well in these groups, right? And so I think as a plant-based exclusive or vastly predominant approach, you want to think whole food plant-based, very wide, very broad, and that will get you the majority of the nutrients that you need. That's a focus on whole, mostly unprocessed or minimally processed fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans, chickpeas, lentils, split peas, herbs and spices, mushrooms, nuts and seeds. And, that will get you where you need to get, where you need to be as far as a healthy baby and mom. Now, and having water as your drink of your beverage of choice, taking a prenatal vitamin, preferably actually taking a prenatal vitamin and eating healthily a month or more before you conceive, because something like about 50% of pregnancies in the United States are unplanned. And so if you play the game of, well, I'm just going to start eating right and taking my prenatal once I know I'm pregnant, you're behind the time at least 50% of the time. And you may be missing important windows, especially when it comes to things like folate and some of the other vitamins and minerals that play a role in having a healthy neural tube development, which is a step in the embryological process where the brain and the spinal cord is formed, and there can be devastating consequences of not having enough of that. And that's why it's important to be eating well, taking the prenatal vitamin. And so when it comes to macronutrients, the two big categories that change are protein and essential fats. And so for protein, the good news is that something like between 95-97% of the American population is already consuming enough or more than enough protein. And so even though our protein requirements increase in pregnancy by like 25 grams on average for a singleton, meaning a single one baby in the uterus, or up to 50 grams for twins, a lot of women are already eating excesses of 20 or 30 or 40 grams more than they need at baseline. But simple ways to make sure that you're getting enough protein is focusing on the legumes, have plenty of protein, and you can incorporate those 2 or more times a day with, having soy milk with your oatmeal. And that might be actually a better choice than almond when it comes to protein. And then, a bean burrito for lunch, and maybe a lentil-based pasta instead of regular, white pasta, for example. And you're already seeing additions of protein, nut butters, seeds, having your hemp seeds or chia seeds or flax seeds, all that stuff mixed in your diet helps from a protein standpoint. And then that sort of ties into the fatty acids, the omega-3s, which there's a little bit of controversy in this, but we get short chain omega-3s from our diet, and the great sources are some that we already talked about, which is the chia seed, flaxseed, and hemp seed, and some in walnuts. And Pregnant women, interestingly, are better than anyone else in converting these short chain fatty acids into long chain omega-3 fatty acids like DHA and EPA. And so some people say, well, as long as you're getting enough of the flax and chia, you're going to be making all the DHA and EPA that you need. And these long chain omega-3s are important for the developing brain, the developing retina, the nervous system in general for the fetus. And others say, well, even though we don't have all the science that we need, it might be better to take a healthy supplement of DHA and EPA between 200 and 300. And that would be typically from algae, which is where fish get it from anyway. And that way you can avoid some of the potential risks like mercury or persistent organopollutants that can be seen in our fish population. And then there's a bunch of little micronutrient requirements that by and large are going to be met by eating this broad, healthy, whole food plant-based diet and taking a prenatal vitamin. And the 8 that I think about and that you'll see in that book, Nourish, are iron and iodine, calcium and choline, folate and zinc, and B12 and D. B12 is important. We know we talk about that a lot, and probably worth mentioning briefly here is that make sure your prenatal vitamin has a good amount of it. Most people say 50 to 100 micrograms a day, or in pregnancy, or 1,000 twice a week will get you where you need. So some women will just take a separate B12 of 1,000 twice a week. Vitamin D, 'tis the season to not be getting enough vitamin D from the sun because we're covered up and the sun is at a lower angle for most of us in the Northern Hemisphere. And so taking somewhere between 600 to 2,000 international units a day it can be very important for things, not only maternal health, but fetal health as well.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much for breaking down those specifics. Can be sometimes a tongue twister when you're naming all those like macro and micronutrients. So, and I definitely, agree with the fish choice, especially from an algae source. And, it's not just the heavy metals, we're learning more and more, from our oceans just being so polluted and so much trash and the microplastics, in addition to the heavy metals. And it's just very, very, they can't break it down, so whatever they're ingesting, especially in their fat cells, we're ingesting as well. So very, very important. I'm glad you highlighted that. And going back to the prenatal in terms of folic acid, and and for those that are watching that are pregnant, know someone that is pregnant, or you're about to be pregnant, definitely consult with your primary and OB provider as well. In addition, but we do talk a lot about folic acid. What would you say in terms of the natural sources of folate in plant sources, and would that be sufficient, or would you still recommend folic acid as a supplement?
Yeah, it's a great question. So some patients, some of my patients would say, I am absolutely against taking medications and supplements, and I want to get everything from my diet. And I want to work with every patient where they are. But I still recommend, if you are willing to during pregnancy, to take a prenatal vitamin, make it a vegan pill if that is better for you. It's the safest way to make sure that you are getting these critical vitamins and minerals and other nutrients. And messing around with neural tube defects is not a game that most of us want to play. Now, the requirement for the average woman without any increased risk for neural tube defects is about 600 dietary equivalents of food folate. And that actually comes out to only 300 micrograms of supplemental folic acid. But you'll see that most prenatal vitamins come with 400 micrograms. So there are numbers all over the place. But if you really want to focus on getting it from your food, a nice way to remember it, folate and foliage have the same root. And so green leafy vegetables have food folate, but they're in all sorts of things like legumes and and grains and fruits and vegetables and in general. And so just by eating widely and healthily as much as possible, then you'll be probably getting your folate you need. But what can challenge this is, of course, in first trimester, usually starting around 6 weeks, is where the sometimes quite severe nausea and vomiting of pregnancy can come in, and the mild form is seen in 50% and more of pregnant women, maybe 75%. And the severe form, thankfully, the one where it gets you admitted to the hospital almost, or sometimes quite literally, hyperemesis gravidarum, thankfully is in a percent or less of pregnant population. But still, the nausea and vomiting can be such that you're not eating a well-balanced, well-rounded diet. And so if you can, stomach a pill when you're least nauseous during the day, at least nauseated during the day, that can help guarantee that you're getting enough in that critical early portion of first trimester.
Yeah. That's good. It's good to, I remember my rotations and clerkships during the OB rounds where, they were just, they were just knocking back at the hospital. They were stocking with Shasta. And if anyone knows what Shasta is, it's kind of like a very, it's kind of like, what's a popular soda that everyone drinks now? LaCroix or something like that. But it was just all ginger flavor, right?
Yeah.
So they're just knocking back, all those, hospital grade. I've seen a couple of cases of hyperemesis gravidarum. It's not fun. And for me personally, I would take pain over nausea any day. So, and imagine having weeks and weeks of that. It's just not a fun party to be in. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. And in terms of, in general, are there any things to avoid, during this time period? Especially, there's a lot of things to pay attention to and be, mindful. And we can obviously spend a whole session on this. But, while you're whole food plant-based, is there anything that we have to pay attention to avoid?
Some that we've touched on already that most people are already doing well with, but worth mentioning just briefly since we are tackling this as a category is cigarettes, as very important to avoid in its effects on the size of the baby and preterm delivery and infant mortality and whatnot. So if you've been thinking about quitting, now's the time. And then let's see, alcohol as well. There's probably no safe amount to drink when you're pregnant, and the official US and United Kingdom guidelines recommendations say to not drink any. The other ones would be, we've talked about the fish, but for someone who's eating exclusively plant-based, that won't be an issue. So that's great. There are questions about, sprouts. Sprouts are sometimes contaminated with bacteria related to the really animal and factory farming systems, but seeing contaminated sprouts is a risk, and you want to minimize that. People who are predominantly plant-based, but say eat a little bit of cheese, should stay away from all unpasteurized cheeses and all the soft cheeses. Even if they say pasteurized, it's probably safer to stay away from those. Excessive amounts of things, like if we wanted to think about someone who's already hardcore gung-ho plant-based and doing everything right, and it doesn't want to is on a no salt diet, and so is getting their iodine from sea vegetables. There are a couple that you have to worry about. The nori, which is the seaweed that is generally wrapping your veggie sushi with, because you shouldn't be eating sushi during seafood sushi during pregnancy. But if you're consuming it, that's probably a decent source of iodine. We need about 150 micrograms per day as a non-pregnant adult, but during pregnancy, a little bit more, 220 micrograms a day. And so iodized salt, a half a teaspoon will bring it to you. But if you're not having salt, the nori is a decent way to get it. But things like kelp, which has a lot of iodine, can have too much in pregnancy. I think I saw a half a teaspoon of kelp is already over 1,000 micrograms of iodine, and that's in a potentially dangerous level, and it can affect your fetus's developing thyroid. So probably best to stay away from kelp and wakame and dulse and RMA, other than maybe intermittently, and then maybe once a week in small amounts, and then always staying away from hijiki, which is that type of seaweed that happens to be high in arsenic. Mm-hmm. Those are a few that come to mind. I'm sure there are others that I'm forgetting, but from a plant-based standpoint,
no, that covers most commonly for sure. I think most sushi, especially seaweed paper, specifically that would be more like nori, and most of the sushi that is wrapped. You're actually taking me back to my culinary days where we actually did a lot of this. We experimented with different kinds of seaweed as well. And also it's important to knowing, just to add on to that, country of origin, and where some waters could be more heavily polluted, and things like that. So that's also something of note, and just looking at it and seeing the source and seeing if it's more organic, and things like that is important to pay attention to. So as we about to close out, I think it's always a good question to kind of think about, because we're still in a pandemic, and we are being more indoors. Is there adjustments that you would recommend in terms of like whether it's the kitchen, the pantry, fridge, or freezer while you're pregnant to kind of maybe stock up on, or to minimize, just for success, if they are spending more time, because we're obviously in a very unprecedented time, and pregnant, like everyone else, is more indoors. Is there something in our kitchen and pantries that we can adjust to make it more of a successful environment for them?
Well, there certainly have been a lot of very challenging times during these last 2 years, and there are a few benefits related to the COVID pandemic, and a lot of people are preparing their own food more, which of course is a big challenge for the restaurant industry, but for our own health, knowing that added oils and added salts and added sugars are most consumed in processed foods and in restaurant foods overall. One of the benefits is that we're cooking our own stuff more. And that means that you are in control of what you put on your plate. And so in our kitchen, for example, we order a lot of bulk, and having, dried beans, dried grains, dried lentils, all this stuff allows us to have something that we can throw in we use an Instant Pot that we can batch cook and have as far as source. I'm not pregnant, by the way, in case you're wondering, but just general recommendations.
Couldn't tell.
Yeah, the camera angle makes it. But just speaking in general, and then this holds true for women that are pregnant, is having all these things batch cooked, ready to go. You've got your high protein sources available, and you can, instead of, if you don't buy the 3 bags of potato chips and corn chips and things like that, you won't have them in your house, and you'll have these other things to snack on, and to eat pretty much as you want when we're talking about these nutrient dense but calorie sparse or calorie poor foods that are basically just about all whole food plants other than nuts and seeds. And so those are some things: batch cooking, having them ready, having things prepared. If you're having the nausea and vomiting of first trimester, or if you're one of the unlucky women who has it during second and third as well, for some staying away from saturated fats, and having something cold to sip on, small meals. So, green smoothies with some fruit and omega-3s like chia and flax in there can be something that's nice. And then focusing on the ginger, just like you were talking about Colin with, ginger in any form that you can handle will be helpful for you during these times as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, would you be able to just incorporate any form of ginger? I use ginger a lot in smoothies and stuff like that, but just brewing just ginger tea, do you find that that has helped with bouts of nausea?
Sure. Yep. Ginger tea, ginger ale, ginger in your smoothie, ginger in your food. I made an assumption. I was seeing a pregnant patient who was from Nepal a couple months ago, and said, "Oh, well, I didn't mention it, but you guys probably put a lot of ginger in your cooking because that's one of the staples when I'm making my South Asian cuisine." And they're like, "No, we don't ever cook with any ginger." And so I said, "Okay, great. So that might be something that you might want to add, even though it's not a traditional flavor for you and your family, but that could be something that you could add to your cooking as well."
Yeah, definitely. So we're gonna close out here. I know that you have brought some plants, to kind of show us, what you do, for your own household. What do you have going on? What did you want to show us?
Sure thing. Okay, I'm going to reach over and see if I don't pull the computer off the table here. 1 second. Okay, so some people who follow me on social media or something like that will know that I like to garden a lot, and that gardening is something that I recommend to everyone that will walk slowly enough for me to talk to them about it. But here are some things that are growing in our garden right now. So this little guy is a Mexican key lime, which is quite delicious, and you can put on your beans and your greens and whatever else you're eating. This is a different kind of lime called a bear's lime. This is a Meyer lemon. This is
I love Meyer lemons.
They're so great, right? A little sweeter than the average lemon. Here's a Satsuma mandarin and our first navel orange pick for the season. And so these are a bunch of different kinds of citrus, which reminds me of a great way to use that is with your iron-rich foods, whether it's at the time that you're taking your prenatal vitamin or you're just eating your other iron-rich foods, that this will help with the absorption. So we throw citrus, either eating it raw or in the case of the lemons and the limes, in our foods quite regularly. And that's one of the benefits of it, besides the fact that it tastes good. And the other thing that's growing so well right now here in December are the greens. And so, we've got, here's some chard, which is one of those that high oxalate that holds on to its calcium a little bit more, but still is very healthy for you. And it comes in so many different beautiful colors.
Oh my God.
And we still call them greens, but sometimes they're not so green when you look at them, but these beautiful purple colors, and collards and kale and mustards all brought it, will all bring the folate that we've been talking about and the iron and all these wonderful things. And we can't forget the tree collards, which are beautiful to look at and even better to eat.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. Makes me think of my show and tell days back when we were kids. You remember those?
Very similar. Except I think it would have been like a Nintendo or something before, but now it's fruit and veg from the garden.
Oh yeah. It also makes me think about, as you were showing that, how we also, because we're so used to, for those of us that haven't grown up on the farm or haven't really picked our own produce, like literally from the ground, or harvest them, we tend to really discard, produce that isn't attractive looking or, ugly produce, right? Do you have, is it nutritionally, because you have such a green thumb, nutritionally speaking, do you find that is much of a difference when it's not attractive, or you think that we should still go for them as well? Give them some love.
Right, exactly. Well, I think one of the benefits of growing your own stuff is that you are going to consume more of it than what even makes it to the shelves at the market, right? So the stuff that makes it to the shelves at at wherever you do your shopping, or even at farmers markets, are the stuff that looks the best, that has the best curbside appeal, so that you'll stop by and get it. And so a lot of that stuff was tossed, hopefully composted, but otherwise not used for consumption. Man, when I'm growing chard, I will still eat the stuff that's been mangled by slugs and snails, and picked apart by aphids and all the other things that are challenges for us in the garden. And I wash it off, and it's not the prettiest thing, and I don't post those on Instagram, but I'm gonna put them in the pot nonetheless. And I think it also ties into, when you're asking about nutritional value, I think things that are picked very, very early and sent across the United States or from other countries, and especially if they aren't grown in the best soils, tend to not have the same levels of plant-based nutrients, like the phytonutrients and the antioxidants and whatnot. And so picking them at their just peak ripeness allows them to taste better, and are going to get you all these extra nutrients that will keep ourselves healthy, and our pregnant patients developing their fetuses, their babies, to grow up big and strong.
Yes. I love it. You're referring to the number of food miles they have to travel to. And not only that, they have to put all these chemicals on it just to preserve it. So yes, the closer, in location and proximity, the better. So Dr. Jeffrey Pierce, thank you so much for being here with us and spending a little bit of your time and sharing your wisdom and expertise with us. Please, for those that want to, reach out to you, find you on social media, or even see you as a provider, as a lifestyle medicine plant-based physician, where can they go to find you?
Sure. Thank you for asking that. I'm on Instagram, and will post mostly fun things from the garden, but hopefully try to make references to why they are healthy for us at Dr. Jeff Pierce. And then I am licensed in California and Texas and in Florida. And so if you are interested in a consultation, whether you're a man or a woman or pregnant or not, happy to see you and walk the path of wellness with you. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Yes. And we'll definitely put that in the show notes after this goes on air. So thank you again, Dr. Jeffrey Pierce. And, guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of Thrive Bites podcast. If you enjoy this, please like and comment and subscribe. And if you feel that this is a benefit for someone else, please let them know as well. And until then, please say goodbye to Dr. Jeffrey Pierce. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for watching that episode. We hope you enjoy it. And please remember to like and subscribe down below so you can get continuous updates for future episodes and future guests. And we can't wait for this upcoming season. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you